Welcome back to the Know My Truth podcast, where we talk about what it's like to live, work, own a business in Northern Michigan. And today we have special guest Sarah Ismond. So Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I usually start these off by telling the audience how I know you, but I think it would be more fun for us if you told the world how do you think we know each other? Because if you were to ask me how I know you, I don't have a great answer. I don't even remember when we first met. But we have this really very tumultuous relationship in the sense of I feel like we've been friends, we've been enemies, everything in between. So how do we know each other?
Yeah, so I never heard of you.
Oh, gosh.
Until I started coaching at CrossFit. Actually, I don't think I was coaching yet. And you were just randomly at a group class. And I remember being really annoyed with you because the coach was explaining like what we're doing, and Gino's just like over on the pull-up bar. Literally, we were just joking about this, but I think you were doing pull-ups or like swinging on the bar, not paying any attention. I'm like, who is this guy? And I think that's how I met you. And then I got to experience being on the coaching side. We've even had like a one-on-one where no one showed up.
An accidental one-on-one.
An accidental one-on-one. And you were, again, just hanging out on that pull-up bar, not listening to the instructions.
So the pull-up bar story actually goes a little bit deeper than that, because when I started CrossFit, I did what's called Foundations, which is like your entry level. Like, I think you just go there. I don't even know why I did the Foundations class, because it wasn't like I was debating if I was going to join or not. I think they just saw me and they're like, this guy's not ready for the real thing, so we should do something a little bit different. So anyways, I went to the Foundations class with Coco, Butter Popsicle, and I couldn't hang on the pull-up bar for like 10 seconds. So being able to do a pull-up was a big deal. And then I remember, I think it was my first open where I did my first kipping pull-up. So people like you don't appreciate this because you're so fit. But like the ability to do a pull-up is like, that's why I keep doing them, because like it was like a big deal, and now I can do them. And usually what you guys are saying during the beginning of the class is so boring that I have to do something besides.
Yeah, and it's super appreciative when you say, hey, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And we already told you.
I know. So.
But we love it. Like, I always say this too. I'm like, having Gino in your class changes the environment, and it's like a good thing. Like, it makes it fun. It's funny. We have a good relationship. It's always kind of fun to be a part of a CrossFit fitness community.
Tell the audience about our darkest moment.
Our friendship has been tested for over a year. I don't think Gino really wanted to be friends with me. There is a part of the CrossFit called the CrossFit Open. It's where you do it worldwide. Everyone kind of like can partake in it. They can kind of choose to or not. And we do it pretty actively, and you have to have a judge who counts your reps. And they're very much say like if it was a quality rep or if it was a no rep. And which one are you thinking about?
I'm thinking the first time.
Okay, the first time
was the wall walks.
We were doing wall walks, which is when you start on the ground and you walk your feet up the wall and your hands towards the wall, so you get into a handstand. And Gino clearly didn't do it to standard.
I don't know clearly.
So I said no rep, and he looked at me, and then he did it again, and it was again another no rep. And after that, you didn't talk to me for, how long would you say?
A long time.
It was a long time. Like, and he always brought it up, and I think I hold true to what I said. It was a no rep.
All right. Well, next time we're gonna have to bring. I'm gonna get Dewan to come and record it. That way we can. I'll send it to CrossFit headquarters. No, that's fun. The reason I want to have you on is I want to make sure the audience knows that this isn't just. We've had a lot of people from CrossFit, and I was a little bit self-conscious of that. Because I don't want people to think that the only people I know are from CrossFit, and two, that just is not like, this isn't a CrossFit. This is about what it's actually like to live in Northern Michigan. But I think the bigger picture is this just goes to show how many people from how many different walks of life go to CrossFit. So I think that's interesting. So you grew up in Northern Michigan, in Petoskey. What was that like?
Yeah, I grew up, and just to kind of preface, it's such a small town vibe that for me, it was actually kind of almost hard growing up here because my dad was a doctor, my mom was a teacher. I have two brothers that kind of have reputations of their own, and so I was always someone's little sister, Kay and Tim's daughter. Like, I didn't ever feel like I could kind of like just become Sarah Ismond, you know? And it is like one of the things that I think I've learned to love about Petoskey is that people do get to know you and they get to know you. Like, you can't be anonymous. And I think that was just, it was an annoying thing as a kid that I've grown to love, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Would you say you've created a name for yourself now? Are they Sarah's parents? Are they Sarah's brother?
I think they would say that. I think I'm still very much like, I moved back here after college, so I've only been back for about 4 years. And I think I'm still very much in that phase of like trying to figure out how to be an adult in your childhood home, which is definitely interesting at times.
One of the things I've obviously always admired about you is just how high level of an athlete you are. Sarah, for those of you that don't know, which is probably most of you, is, I don't want to be dramatic or overstate, but would you say you are one of the best? You're certainly one of the best. You're certainly the best female CrossFit athlete in this area. Are you one of the best in the state? Are you one of the best in the country? What would Kenny say? Would Kenny say, are you one of the best in the country? One of the best in the world?
I don't know if I would like say that. I think like in the state I hold up pretty well. But I think it's just something I love like to do. So I try not to place myself or rank myself on it. If that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
How would you say either Northern Michigan has changed or your perspective of Northern Michigan has changed since you were, growing up here as a little kid to an actual adult?
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely gotten bigger. Like, I always remember as kids, like when we were getting ready to go back to school, we'd always go to like Traverse City, and that always felt like such a big city, which is like even bigger now. Yeah. I kind of feel like, not to the same extent, but I feel like there's just more people in the area, which is great. But it's just like, sometimes it feels almost a little bit more crowded. Like even just driving and people doing U-turns around those little islands drives me nuts. But like just seeing like that a little bit is just kind of one of those things that you just kind of observe. Like, it just feels a little bit more full than I think it was when I was growing up.
It's really funny you said that, because I feel like maybe God put me on this earth to just do all the things that annoy you.
No, you don't.
Because I do that also. I'm actually, Candace's recorder is editing or producing or whatever she's doing right now with this. And she actually hates driving with me because, do you know where like the subway is? Like, you go past the subway to the hospital. We get lunch there once in a while, and I always turn left out of there, which is like,
you're not
supposed to.
There's a sign.
Yeah, there is, but we never got in trouble. But it's like, you have to be a very skilled driver to pull that off.
Yeah, no, it's like my biggest pet peeve. Like, come on, guys, especially in town. You do that. You don't do U-turns around there, do you?
Sometimes, if I have to.
Gee, no, you can literally just go around the block.
Yeah, but it's like in the life where minutes matter. Like, time kills deals. And I think somebody like you, that's life revolves around a clock, like, I feel like you would understand better than anyone, like how many, like the value of seconds.
Yeah, but it also costs seconds to sit around a car that's turning around.
No, I'm fast. I'm not holding anybody
It goes in reverse.
No, I don't even, there's no reversing. It's just fast.
Do you see that? Have you seen that happen?
I have. All right, serious question. What's one thing you hate about Northern Michigan? And it can't be coaching class that I'm in.
Well, I already talked about the U-turn thing, but
it cannot be Gino related. What's something outside of me that you hate about Northern Michigan?
Let's see. That's a tough one. I think the big thing is that I kind of prefaced a little bit just growing up here is as it's kind of like a blessing and a curse is you don't get to be anonymous a little bit. Like sometimes it just feels like everyone knows everything that's going on, and like sometimes it's very genuine and people are like, oh, like they just really care and want to know. And other times it's like, oh, I just wish no one like knew every single thing that's going on or like all of that, I guess. But at the same time, I don't think I would trade it because I've been on the other side where like I've lived in a big city and being anonymous all the time kind of stinks a little bit. Are you going to tell me Mount Pleasant is the big city you're referring to? No, I lived in Grand Rapids. You did? Yeah. I didn't know that. Tell me that. When? So I was there for 15 weeks for an internship for college, and it was actually during 2020. So it was a really COVID. Yeah, it was a really tough time to be there because I was working on a geriatric unit, so I wasn't allowed to be around basically anyone. I was like in full PPE gear like all the time, and it was pretty terrible. Like just when everything's like shut down and you just can't meet anyone, and it
Right.
was just a really tough time. And that was a big city, I would say, right?
Grand Rapids is a
Yeah.
huge city. I love Grand
Yeah.
Rapids. Actually, I always joke that when you're in, this is kind of funny for the podcast. We always joke that when you live in northern Michigan, you're either a Detroit person or you're a Grand Rapids person.
Yeah.
You either like go to, so I went to college in Detroit, so I love that area. But I recently went to Grand Rapids, and it's fine. It's good. I think it's a really cool city. It's smaller. The downtown's super cool.
Yeah.
What's one thing you like better about Grand Rapids than you do Northern Michigan? What was one thing you miss about Grand Rapids?
I didn't like it.
At all?
I also didn't think I can say too, like I have lots of family in the Detroit area, so I kind of gravitate a little bit more just because of that family part. But I was completely, again, just that isolation was so hard. I think if I had to say there was one thing I had to do, because everything was closed, so there's no gyms, and fitness is like obviously a big part of my life. And
Yeah.
I had to, this is actually kind of a funny story, I had to drive to go run someplace that I
gosh.
felt like secure in. And so I don't know if you're familiar with where Reed's Lake is.
Yeah.
That's like close to where my internship was. So I would have to drive like 15 minutes from where my apartment was to get there. And I would run the lake, which is about like just shy of 4 miles, and I do that every morning at 5 a.m. But one time, like my car was like doing something weird. It was like bouncing, and I was like, oh, it's just Michigan roads. Like, it's no big deal. My car actually ended up breaking down at 5 a.m. and nothing's
Really?
open at 5 a.m. to do that. I somehow got it like so I could coast like in a safe spot on the side. But I think about that a lot of like the inconvenience of having
Yes.
to like drive somewhere to run
Yeah.
was kind of what was a deal breaker for me, I think.
What is one thing you love about Northern Michigan? Cannot be fitness related.
I would say like definitely I think my time living in Mount Pleasant where there was no natural resources really, like there was a kind of weird looking creek that you couldn't swim in,
Yeah.
but there wasn't like a lot you could do outdoor recreationally, and I think that was I took that for granted because I've always lived here.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, where's the water, where's cool hiking trails, and there just wasn't any of that. So I think that's what I love about Northern Michigan is you can go to multiple lakes like in a matter of minutes. You can drive to one, but you can also at the same time like get into the woods, go to the trail systems, the biking trails, awesome, like all of that. It's very like still an active lifestyle, but that's just what I gravitate towards is like the outdoor recreation part.
We find a lot of people that move here are moving here, not mainly, but largely or to some extent because it's just such an active area.
Yeah.
I mean, with the bike path, Little Traverse Wheelway, like the ability to run out your front door in most places you live, and mountain biking, and there's just so many different ways to be active in Northern Michigan, which I think is great.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny when I asked Kenny that question, he said there's freaking water. And that was like the end of it. So you said it a lot more words than he did. And we're actually going to clip that and try to make it go like viral. That we want to do like a story of the water and just have his voice as like the voiceover and see if we can make it trend on audio. So that, what are some things you must see, or this cannot be fitness related again, so you can't say CrossFit. What are some things you must do or see in Northern Michigan that maybe not everybody talks about? Because I always see you on social media with your dog on the beach and that sort of thing. So tell me, like, what are some things you should see or do in Northern Michigan?
I think like two that come to mind right away is one of my all-time favorite things that I always did with my grandma when she came up here. My grandma was legally blind, so we were always really creative with like how we would incorporate like different things that she wanted to do, and she loved kayaking. Like that was her go-to thing. And so if you've ever heard of Bear River, the Bear River Livery has, this lady runs this operation, and you can basically rent a canoe, kayak, paddleboard, whatever you kind of, what's your interest to be on water. You can rent it like really affordably for either an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, however long you want to be out there. And she'll transport you up the river, and then you just kind of like go down the river. And it's one of my all-time favorite, like kind of, I feel like it's like a hidden gem to an extent where like it's still locally ran, but not a ton of people always know about it. But that's like one of my all-time favorite things to do is like kayak or canoe. I haven't gotten into paddleboarding, but I know that's a really big thing up here.
Pretty trendy.
And then the other thing that I really love is kind of on your way to Charlevoix before you get to the bridge, Mount McSaba. It's really cool because you can have like hiking paths. There's a disc golf. What is that called?
Disc golf.
Yeah, disc golf course on there. And I take my dog there. So I have a 4-year-old lab, and he absolutely loves swimming in the summer. Like he actually prefers swimming versus like going for walks and stuff. And it's a dog friendly beach, which is really nice. So people actually know there's going to be dogs there. They don't freak out. So those are probably like two of my favorite things that we have in the area that I absolutely love.
Mount McSaba is a good one. That is definitely, if I had to make a list of hidden gems in northern Michigan, I think Mount McSaba would be one of those. And it's weird because I think back in the day, Mount McSaba used to be a bigger deal than it is now. And I don't know if they stopped. I don't know what changed, but something did. I think because there's a ski hill there too. And I mean, it's not like Boyne or Nubs or whatever, but there is some semblance of like a ski hill with some kind of lift. I should probably investigate that more.
Yeah, they have like a tow rope lift, I think. But I'm also surprised. Like, I'll talk about it all the time, and people who are locals are like, wait, what? Like, where? And I'm kind of surprised because to me, I'm like, I think everyone should know where it is.
They should. And you could be the ambassador.
Yeah.
What is something you wish Northern Michigan had? Is there something... What do you wish was different about Northern Michigan?
Ooh. I don't know. I feel like I don't want it to grow much more. I know that sounds kind of like selfish, but I don't really want like, the big like shopping malls or Target or like all that. Like I kind of want to keep like growing the goodness in here, That's such a hard thing with areas that become popular is we had Sam Bailey on, who's the director for the Northern Lakes Economic Alliance. He was talking about how Petoskey needs... I don't remember what the number was, but somewhere between 200 and 300 more like apartment units, which they're building. But I'm just afraid, the roads in the summer are super busy now. But if you add in, 200, 300, 400, new places for people to live. And I asked them, are these people going to drive? Because, the roads in this town, like you drive into Petoskey along the water, like you can't make that bigger. Right. And I think it's just so hard. Because again, you want this area. I wish there were some things that were different about it, but also that comes with growth. So it's definitely a double-edged sword about what's going to happen in this area. Mm-hmm. Sure. One of the questions I was actually just decided to have fun with this one. So if you don't know Sarah, you've never had fast food. Well, really? Kenny made me have Culver's
recently.
Last year, and it wasn't a great experience.
The other day I was in class, I don't remember what caused it, but I said something about a Happy Meal.
Oh my
and
gosh.
Sarah had no idea what that actually was. I don't remember what we were talking about, but it was something to the effect of like you just thought it was a meal that made you happy. And this is I wish the people listening to this knew Sarah, because this sounds so fake, but it is the truth of, and it's actually one of the things again I admire, because you are so dialed into being an elite athlete that fast food is just not part of your life. Like, not even not part of your life, but like you're just oblivious to it. Yeah. So a question I often ask is, what is your favorite restaurant in Northern Michigan? And I have no idea what you're going to say. So you can just say the chicken and sweet potatoes you make at your house if you want.
Seriously, I was about to say that. So that's my thing, is I really like knowing how food's prepared. All because my brothers once told me that at a restaurant, like there was seagulls. And that's the truth. The meat was seagulls.
So there's a funny story. I don't know if I should tell this, but I'm going to. I'm not going to name any names, but somebody was showing a house in Petoskey a long, long time ago, and it was owned by somebody that owned a restaurant. I'm not going to say the nationality of the restaurant, so I don't get canceled. And they actually had seagulls like in a room. So I think they were
on the same like conspiracy theory maybe. But ever since they said that, this was when I was like really young, like first grade, I like refused to eat I was really picky with meat, but I was also like really refused eating anything that I didn't see be prepared. It was kind of like this weird thing. So I'm kind of like always a little nervous, but I would say my all-time favorite restaurant here is Thai Orchid. Like I absolutely love Thai Orchid.
You're doing a really good job of giving like the insider, like Mount McSaba and I think Thai Orchid during, I want to say it was during COVID. Was it during COVID they stopped doing lunch? So during COVID they stopped doing lunch. And you don't really, it's more of like a takeout. You can eat there, but it's more of a takeout place. So I don't go to Thai Orchid nearly as much as I should for as much as I like it. What do you get there?
Ooh, I either get the patani with tofu or I'll get the pad thai curry with chicken.
Those are both probably the two.
Those are my go-to.
How often do you go there?
Well, I don't like spending money. So if my parents buy, I'll let them.
That's a good spot to go. Then you have to guess. That's so funny. I want to lean in a little bit more about, you obviously are the epitome of living a healthy lifestyle in Northern Michigan. Would you say it's easy? I think when I travel a fair amount. You say I go to Florida every weekend, which isn't entirely true. And one of the things I hate about traveling is how, and I'm not you, but I try to do, I try to maintain a healthy lifestyle to some extent, but it's hard. Do you find, is Northern Michigan, would you say it's easy to be healthy here, hard to be healthy here? How would you weigh in on that?
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things like you always get an input on if you want to pursue that healthy opportunity. I would say there's a lot of accessibility to kind of gear more towards that track.
Yeah.
Just like you had mentioned prior that it's just a very active community. And that kind of is what draws people here is you'll see running groups and you'll see people meet up to go swimming at the break wall. And you'll like see all these little like ways to kind of connect with people is usually through like activity. So I would say it's probably slightly easier, but you also have to be willing to look for it a little bit.
Do you still go to the grain train?
So have you heard? They raised the prices.
On what?
My Thursday burrito.
How much is the burrito now?
It's like $7.99.
Oh, maybe
those things used to be $5.99.
Which one do you get? The bean chicken. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That is one thing that so our office we're right on the corner of Petoskey and Mitchell, probably, I think, the best location in downtown. So it's us, Mighty Fine Pizza, which you've never been to, I'm sure. And have you had pizza?
I've had Mighty Fine. I haven't had I don't really eat the chain pizzas.
You're pointing the wrong way. It's this way.
It's that way.
No, Mighty Fine's this way.
It's right next door. It's right over there.
Yeah, it's right next door this way. It's on the other side of this wall. Oh. And on the other side
of that don't they have a salad named after you?
I wish they should.
I swear you told me that. Was that a lie?
If I did, I lied.
You lied.
I don't think anybody has anything named after me in this town yet, but they should.
Your license plate?
That's my license plate. So, yeah, that's a different story for a different day. So, anyways, the grain train is a co-op. There's one in Petoskey, one in Boyne City. It's part of a co-op chain, I want to say, because there's a place in Traverse City called Oriana, which is a very big version of the grain train. They have their cups are the same. They have the same soup cups. So that's definitely, a lot of people say that's, certainly an asset. It's really the only place to buy groceries downtown Petoskey.
Oh yeah, it is.
So
yeah,
it is. You need groceries,
one of those places that I remember talking to you about it, and I said, "Yep, only on Thursdays do I stray away from my rice and ground turkey."
How would you say the cost of living, from your experience, relates here to Mount Pleasant or Grand Rapids? Obviously, you were in Grand Rapids super long, but you probably bought something there.
So when I was staying in Grand Rapids, the price of rent for a studio apartment, so it was super small. I don't know exactly the size of it, but I was spending $1,300 a month, which is a lot for the size that it was, and it was right in downtown Grand Rapids. So it was probably an ideal location, but it was all I could get during such weird times. And then when I was in Mount Pleasant, it was a little different because it's a college town, and you can live in some really interesting apartments that are pretty cheap. So I would say it wasn't necessarily ideal living in Mount Pleasant. And Grand Rapids was very pricey. And then here I have a pretty nice situation as far as rent and all that goes. That's pretty, it's not necessary. It's way more affordable than Grand Rapids. But I would say it's not necessarily it's really cheap like Mount Pleasant, but it's a little bit of an in-betweener.
One thing I would love to hear your input on is and be as honest as you're willing to be. So obviously you live in an area, you're, a CrossFit coach that's not, a super high paying job. What are the difficulties that come with living in an area that is just getting so expensive for a young person? Because obviously, part of what I think, one thing I would like to see, selfishly, I'd like to see more, young professionals. And I think an area, the more young people that are, doing positive things and have good jobs and are trying to, better themselves. I think that's really what makes an area more vibrant. And I think that's something and there's nothing against retirees. I mean, I love, everybody that's moving here, but it seems like the population is getting very older here, which I think creates just a different vibe than, maybe Grand Rapids where there's a bunch of young people living downtown. So what would you say the struggles are, or what is it like being, a young person building your career in what has become a very, very expensive area?
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like it's kind of scary and intimidating.
Yeah.
That's always my go-to is because I'm also like on my own, like I'm not married and I'm living by myself. I have like a roommate, but it's one of those things where it's like there's this pressure of like, if I don't make it work, then that means I have to leave.
Right.
And I think that's something I've chosen recently to shift that mentality, because I'm like, no, like if I'm constantly thinking that's my out, then I'm not gonna like put my roots down here, right? So I would say sometimes it is really easy to like just think like there's not room or space for being a young person that is like very much in the thick of establishing and creating a career. But I would say like it's the support, I think, is what helps in that scenario. Like, yeah, there's a lot of challenges just because that's the reality for young professionals, but I think that would be experienced in a lot of places. Like, I don't think it's just an experience here. I think in general, young individuals starting their career are all having their own challenges, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And it's, like I'm very untraditional as far as like my personal career goes. And I think that sometimes that almost is like beneficial, because it's like, okay, I can kind of take the time and keep growing and developing. But yeah, there's definitely a sense of like the biggest challenge, I guess, would be I feel like there's pressure that I'm not ever doing enough.
Yeah, I think that.
I don't really know if that answers.
No, it does. It really does. It brings up, I think this is not a coaching. I'm not here to coach you or to be your therapist, but I do think for you, and I've kind of mentioned this to you before in passing, that you have a very specific, like, I think you are paid in the world based on the value you bring to the market. And I think your path to success, if I were your business coach, I would say is you have a very, like, you have a lot of knowledge. And there are people, and I said this when Kenny was on, I'll say, when CrossFit's expensive. Like, it's expensive to go every month. You got to buy all the shoes. You got to buy all the stuff. At least that's what I do. And I think, the skill you have, there are people that would pay you. I think sometimes young people have to change their mindset that, I think you're fortunate because you have such a specialized skill that if you said, and we always joke about me wanting to do a bar muscle up, but if you said, hey, I'm going to give you a class that in 6 months, a year, whatever, that you're going to be able to do a bar muscle up, but that class is going to cost $1,000. I'm signing up for it as long as there's some kind of money back guarantee at the end. So I do think young people need to, the good news, bad news is when you live in an area that's super expensive, yes, it is hard to buy a house. It's hard to, go to the grain train and pay $8 for a burrito. But also there's, a pretty big base here of people that could be your clients. And, especially as we all age and, I turned 40 and I feel like, maybe it's a midlife crisis, but now I'm like, when I'm at CrossFit now, I'm like, how am I I'm here to make the last 20 years of my life as good as possible versus like getting a six pack or like whatever other vanity metric you might want to use. So I definitely think that is something that, you could, and I know my guess is you're probably not terribly driven by money, but you have the ability and the skill set to like help a lot of people. And luckily for you, that pays well usually. So that's just, my 2 cents.
And I think that's like a really, like, I don't want to speak for everyone that's young, but I feel like that's such a hard thing and to make that mental shift, I guess, because you're like kind of almost have that imposter syndrome, which I'm kind of learning that everyone's an imposter in their own ways. It's like we're all trying to figure it out, but I think sometimes you have that sense of doubt. Like, you're like, oh, like, is it? Like, and I think now that it's like, I'm getting more confident in like my career and like the way and direction that I want to go. I think it's like now I'm starting to see like, oh, like, yeah, like I can kind of like own this. But like for a long time it was like, oh, I don't know, like Gino made fun of my music and my playlist. Like I am not
They've gotten way better. No, I think you are a good coach. I think you are like the epitome of a coach, meaning I think I have a lot of coaches. Like I've got business coaches, financial coaches, all of you guys are CrossFit. So I mean, I'm a very highly coached. I mean, I'm coached. And I think the thing that you get the most right about coaching is you live what you preach, meaning like you're not half-assing in a workout, so you don't expect us to. And you probably no-rep yourself as my guest, so you no-rep us. And you're just, you're dialed into like you don't miss. And I think that's why you've had the level of success within CrossFit. And I one of my favorite Sarah moments was, I think I've told you this before, was it almost reminded me, this is so wild to say this, but it's the truth. It reminded me of like almost like the Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan effect of like, you just know Tiger Woods, if it was close on Sunday back in his prime, you knew who was going to win. And we were at the fitness festival, which there's one coming up we'll talk about pretty soon. it was indoor, and there was a handstand walk. I want to say it was a handstand walk, like almost like a relay, like it was a team event. And I want to say when you took the floor, you were behind, and I've just seen you do it enough times that I just knew you were going to win, and you passed them like nothing. And if you've never seen Sarah handstand walk, if you follow her on Instagram, that's all she does. And it's just, I think it's just, I'm such a fan of elite human beings, of like people that are elite at what they do, whether it's cooking, real estate, CrossFit, being a janitor. Like I'm so impressed by like the level of just how elite you are, and I see like how hard you work and like the extra hours. So, you know, you're a super impressive individual, and I'm sure that's going to translate into your business and work career.
Oh, thanks.
I mentioned the fitness festival, which is, I think it's really funny that on our intake form we always ask if there's anything you want to promote that's coming up, and there's literally, it's this weekend, and this podcast comes out. Today's Tuesday. This podcast comes out Wednesday. It's actually this weekend. So what is happening this Saturday at the waterfront?
Yeah, at the waterfront, we're going to be having our second outdoor annual Know Me Fitness Festival. So we have about 100 athletes coming up from throughout the state of Michigan. I think maybe even a couple of out-of-staters. But it's going to be a whole bunch of fitness happening. There's going to be 4 different workouts, which we call events. And they're going to test gymnastics and weightlifting and cardio and all the fun things.
Yeah,
so,
it's a lot of fun.
It's going to be quite, rain or shine, it's going to be quite an event.
Wait, is it going to rain?
No,
we're
not allowed it to rain.
Okay. Is it supposed to?
Not in my mind.
Okay.
We're only putting good vibes out there.
If you can will the weather, then
I will try with all my might. Yeah, you never know with the outdoor events what you're going to get, but it's still going to be great regardless. And it's really cool to just see like our own community, but also like the, you know, CrossFit community as a whole. And I don't think you're ever going to be surrounded by people who want to see you do well more than at an event like that.
I think I told Kenny this when he was on, and I've said it 100 times. I think it's so cool. I'm a huge fan of both you and Kenny, because, you know, obviously Kenny's one of the strongest people I'll probably ever meet in my life, and I love the idea that he just took this concept in his mind and turned it into something. And I think that as humans or as whoever, like, I think that's one of the coolest things you can do when you just come up with an idea and you execute, because everybody has ideas. So few people ever do anything with them. Yeah. And I think those events have turned into, they're fun. And a small plug for myself, I'll be emceeing, so you'll be there.
I'll be assisting Gino in the emceeing.
Sarah's gonna
make sure he does it right.
My vision is, so Sarah won last year. You won both of them last year, and you were taking this year off. And I'm going to have Sarah tell the audience what is going through these athletes' head, because nobody knows better than her what these people are thinking during the events, after the events, before the events. So I think that'll just be a really, I'm as amateur of a CrossFitter as you can possibly get. I love it, but I'm certainly not at your level, and I just think it'll add a dimension of, you know, what's actually going on while these athletes are competing.
Yeah, that'll be fun. One
question I want to make sure we get to before we run out of time: what do you do during the winter? Do you just hate it? Do you anything?
Well, you know, I cry about it for a day and then I get over it. You know, I feel like it's gonna happen. You get used to it the more winters you have.
Right.
I used to dread them when I was younger, primarily because I hate driving. I hate driving year round, but especially in winter. So I remember, like, that was the worst thing, is my brother always got stuck in a ditch on our way to school, like, regularly. And so ever since that, I'm just like, okay, don't get stuck in a ditch. You're doing okay. But once I get beyond that, like, you can still do all the recreation you want outside. Like, I'm a really big snowshoer. I take my dog out. Okay. I actually like off-leashing my dog a lot more in the winter, because you can kind of just, like, roam, do the trails, all that, and not have to worry about him rolling in like a mud puddle or something.
Yeah, dead fish.
Yeah, dead fish. He does that a lot. But yeah, it's still very much a beautiful place to be. I think we get a lot of people who also like to ski. I'm not a skier myself, but I know that I like cross-country skiing sometimes. But yeah, I survive it.
You survive it.
I survive it.
The best you can.
Yeah.
Well, all right. If people want to follow your journey after this podcast, you're probably going to get some sponsorship opportunities. Where can they find you?
I have a Facebook, but I don't have the password to it. So I'm primarily on Instagram at Sarah.
At Sarah Ismond.
_Ismond, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for being a guest, and it was really great talking to you. And I love doing these because every time, the people that we've had on, I've known pretty well. and I learn something new about them every time. So I really appreciate it, and I look forward to watching your path through life. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Gino.